What's up, guys? I am here with... Introduce yourself.
Brian Niswonger.
Yes.
I'm now going into college.
Yeah, dude, I'm so happy to be done with
It's
school.
nice.
I'm
it's
so
very
happy to be done with
nice.
school right now. So, yeah, you obviously agreed to do this for my YouTube channel, which, again, I appreciate.
Of course.
So, we're just going to get straight into it because, about you, that all is covered in the interview. So, the first question I wanted to ask was about your athletic background because originally when I met you, it was both of our junior years, and you were one of the cross-country team captains.
Yeah.
So, the two questions I have related to that is, how long have you been doing cross-country, and was cross-country your first sport that you did?
So, kind of jump into the second question first. It actually wasn't. I had a very strange mindset of sports when I was younger, and so I played. I started off with t-ball, and then I played baseball for a little bit. That was the second longest sport I've ever been a part of. Then I jumped over to soccer. I did Little League basketball. I did like hip hop dance. That was a wild couple years of my life.
I've never heard someone say they've done hip hop dance.
Yeah, I don't mention it too often. But I was going into 8th grade. My parents were like, "You should probably meet a couple people for Hillgrove," and there's a middle school team going into that. And I was like, "Sure, why not?" I always liked the running parts of the sports better than I liked the sports itself.
Yeah. Kind of the opposite of most people.
Yeah, no, it was really interesting.
Most people like the actual sport, but hate the running for it.
Yeah, I'd be playing baseball, and I'm like, I really like the parts where you get to run the bases, and I would always hope for a home run because it didn't mean anything to me that the team got points. It just meant that I could I could just run. And so cross country and track kind of fit that bill perfectly of just the whole sport is running, and the whole thing is you just kind of compete with how fast you run. So
you were not one of the 7-year athletes?
No, I did not start until my 8th grade year. And
was that going into 8th grade or going into high school?
Going into 8th grade. So 8th grade year, I spent a season with the Junior Hawks, and I trained with them. I fell in love with the sport, and it was just I was like, okay, I'll see what high school cross country is like because I heard the rumors of these crazy long runs and the workouts being crazy and everything. And I was like, I'll see how long I last. If I want to switch over to swimming or basketball, I can always do that. But it really just was one of those sports that just kind of clicked with me, and I always enjoyed it so much that I just decided to stick with it. Yeah,
and part of the reason that I also chose you for this interview is because my last YouTube video that is up on my channel right now, I showed the workout that I did, so I did my leg day or whatever, but then at the end of it, I went to cross country's practice. And I roll up there, and as you know, Gambrell left this past year. And I was feeling so bad for the team because I'm like, Gambrell was such an amazing coach, kept everything in order, he kept it all structured and everything like that. So when I went to this practice, I honestly didn't know what the hell I was going to see when I went to the practice.
Which is interesting that you say that because I was just down at Lost Mountain Park the other day checking what they were doing over there, and I was like, it's so bizarre because it's very self-contained in the idea that the current captains right now, they're basically taking over as the coaches. And so they're playing the role as the coaches, and then you have parents to supervise.
Yeah, when I went down there, I got down there a little bit before practice started so I could say hi to Bo and them, and I go up to, I think it was JoJo, because they were stretching. JoJo showed up a little bit late. He comes down, I'm like, so are there coaches here, or is it just y'all? And he's like, oh no, it's just us here. And what I found insane was almost the whole entire team, plus some of the new runners, were there without coaches there.
Yeah.
And these kids who were practically mentored underneath Gambrell, even though he's gone, it's almost like he didn't leave because there's still that accountability factor, and it's just the kids doing it themselves.
Yeah, which was really interesting to me to see kind of the responsibility that they picked up.
Yeah.
And like with how many captains there are this year, they really kind of divided and conquered and said like, okay, we're going to do some days these people lead, some days these people lead. And like it's very promising to me to kind of see that even with the absence of a coach right now, they're still able to practice and they're still able to get what they need done.
Yeah, because most people I know, if they were in cross country and the coach didn't show up, they would slack off on training. They just do an easy run when it's long run, days like that. But the kids still stick to the training that they had before Gambrell left. They stick to the training plan he had because what he did got the program to where it is today.
Of course, yeah.
And Gambrell was one of the main reasons I joined cross country, because going into my sophomore year in high school, as you and pretty much the whole cross country team knows, I was doing ROTC.
Yeah.
And I sucked at running, hated everything about it, pretty much the exact opposite of you. Hated running, but I did their running team for cross country, or their running team for ROTC, which was the orienteering team.
Yeah.
And I fell in love with the map reading part of that because that's something I've always been good at, but I just couldn't run. So I sat down with my parents. I was like, hey, so what can I do to get better at running? And she was like, cross country has a summer training thing. So I went there, no intention to actually go on the team, just to get conditioning in for
and
the summer.
just to train, yeah.
Yeah, just to train. So I do that, and I fell in love with the sport then, but this is back when I could not run 2 miles to save my life. So I knew for sure I was never going to make the time trial time that year. So I took that year off cross country, kept doing ROTC, and it's crazy because this was the year that I started having the problems with ROTC, and I looked back and I was like, man, because Gambrell was the one, even though it was a individual sport, he still made it a team sport.
Yeah.
Which was the opposite of ROTC, where Commander's mindset, he was like, yeah, you run for yourself. And he's told us that before. Which I was like, okay, that's kind of weird. But then I just loved the team aspect of cross country, and it was Gambrell who showed me that team aspect, which got me to quit ROTC and go into cross country instead.
Yeah, and I think cross country is such an interesting outlet to have that unique experience of saying, okay, this is such an individual activity where it's like, I'm not running to benefit the running of anybody else. Like, my running is solely independent to what I am putting in, but you still have that team mindset of saying, like,
right,
okay, I'm running with my teammates. I'm running, like, next to my teammates. They are there to push me just as much as I am there to push them. And so it really is that weird mix of saying, you're doing this to benefit yourself and you're doing this to run faster times for yourself.
Yeah.
But just as much as you getting faster benefits you,
it benefits the team as well.
Benefits everybody else.
And the part that you said about like running with your teammates and that's how you thought about it, my junior year, which was the first year that I actually joined the cross country team, and the last race that I did, which was my PR race, it was 23 something. And I thought that was going to be my worst race because at the beginning, a McKeechin kid kicked me in my ankle with his spike.
Oh my gosh.
And I don't know if you remember that race. That was the race that right at the beginning, I fell down and I was in dead last because a kid kicked me. And I fell wrong on my shoulder. Shoulder was busted up. But I got up, and that's when my mindset kicked in. I was like, okay, I can either let this be the reason that I do my absolute worst, or I can let that drive me. And I ended up running, I think it was like 2 or 3 minutes faster than my previous race because
which is crazy how that happened.
Because what I did is I got up and I was like, oh, that's some bitch, and I started sprinting to get to where I normally am.
Yeah.
So I'm sprinting, as pretty much going as fast as I can. I get up to where I normally am. I'm like, let's keep going. So I just kept going, and I ended up passing quite a few people I never thought I would get close to, and that turned into a PR. Now I found out that I actually bruised my shoulder when I fell, so I ran with technically an injured shoulder.
Yeah.
The fastest I've ever run.
Which is so funny how that all happens, because it's just like you get locked in that like space of saying,
locked
okay,
in the race mindset.
Yeah,
like,
you get locked in saying,
I gotta keep going.
Okay, I'm not letting this guy beat me if he's so low to like whether it was purposeful or not.
Yeah,
like
I was like
to inhibit my running.
Exactly.
And so it's very much that you find the little rivalries and the competitiveness in the most mundane aspects of any part of it.
It's also crazy because as much as competitive as cross country is, I found myself where I'm running, I'm feeling amazing, feeling great, and this was this past year, my senior year, when I was actually okay at running. So I was running, and towards the end of the race, I'm picking up my pace, trying to get the fastest mile that I can, and I run past this kid who's like, he even slowing down, I can see that, and as I pass, I don't just pass and do nothing. I pass, I'm like, come on man, you only got this much further to go. Because even though it's another team,
you still know that they're struggling.
That's the sportsmanship that goes along with the sport, which is the complete opposite of, again, any other sport. And it was what you were saying earlier about your mindset when you're running, right? So your mindset in the race, you're like, okay, I gotta get the fastest time that I possibly can. The racing's the easy part. It's the training and the practices that lead up to it, in my mind, that are the absolute hardest thing that you can do.
Yeah, and
like,
it's like the joke of saying
your long runs, all that.
It's the joke of saying, "Oh, you only raced 3 miles. That can't be that bad." It's like, well, you should see the hundreds of miles that I ran just to race this 3-mile race. And it really is that idea of like, you're slowly filling up that bucket of water until it's that tipping point, and you have this awesome breakthrough experience where, for whatever reason, something just clicked, and you just happen to have so much better of a experience than you usually do.
Right. And so going along with the training, what's like your mindset when you go into training? Because most people, if they just go in thinking, hey, I'm going to run, they're not going to get through, say, one of the long run days.
Yeah.
So how do you switch your mindset to be able to push through times that you thought you wouldn't be able to get past and be able to run as fast as you do?
I think it's definitely a consistency thing in terms of saying, like, okay, over these 4 years I've been able to do X, Y, Z. I've been able to go through long runs. I've been able to push myself to run the way that I am. And it's also saying, like, if I don't push to see if I can do this, I'll never know if I can.
Right.
And so it was more of a consistency and a curiosity of saying, like, okay, I know I was capable of doing something similar to this in the past. Why not push a little bit harder and see if I can kind of open up new areas of improvement and open up new opportunities for me to improve of not just my time, but also kind of my outlook on running, and finding that enjoyment in what a lot of people consider to be like a torture. Like most other sports, their punishment is running.
That's actually on a cross-country t-shirt. It's my sport is your sport.
Yeah, and it's funny because like most runners that I've talked to, they're like, I can't stand that because it's the most cliche thing
it's
that
also
you hear
true.
in running, but it is true.
Like everyone groans when they're like, all right, you got to do a sprint there and back, and we're like, okay, just another day of practice.
And we're like, okay, we had 6-mile repeats that we did. Like, it's such an interesting outlook of saying, okay, I am doing something that like the majority of the population of the entire world is like, why would you do that? Right. Why would you go out and take the time to put that stress on your body, to put like give all that physical energy into just running circles?
Yeah, just like running for a certain amount of time, not doing anything. And the crazy thing is, I've seen you and people that you run with, you run recovery runs for about 45 to 50 minutes at, I would say, a 6:30 to a 7-minute mile pace.
I would disagree a little bit with some of those numbers, but like
it seems like you're running.
And yeah,
fast.
and it's funny you say to people, "Oh, I've got a recovery run today." They're like, "Why are you running? Like, isn't the recovery that you're not running?" And so it's kind of that mental shift of saying, okay, there's a time and a place for everything, and within recovering and running, you still have to run to recover in running.
Yeah.
And so.
But what I was gonna go with that is, you run for 45 to 50 minutes, and the whole time you're with your group of friends, you're talking, you're making jokes, you're laughing, and you're still running faster than most people could run, like just zoned in. Yeah. Which I find hysterical.
And I think it's funny because it's like you do have that scenario with it, and it's also like, to some people they're like, oh, you do this fast for a recovery run? Well, I do this fast. And so like there's always trying to be that bigger fish.
Right.
And so you find yourself in this zone of saying, okay, well, I could do that, but is that really necessary? Let me do what is necessary for me. And let me like say, okay.
Because if you push too hard on a recovery day, you're not going to give as much as you could on the next workout day.
And eventually you'll push so much that you just get injured.
Yeah.
And so it's very crucial to kind of be honest with yourself and say, okay, maybe I'm not in that group. Maybe they look like they're going fast, but to them that's a pace that is slow enough that they can do what they need to do to recover. I may not be there yet, but that's not necessarily a bad thing.
And so another question I have, and this doesn't just go for cross country, this goes for schooling, any type of exercise, anything you're doing in life. For you, what is your work ethic towards things that you might not 100% enjoy, but you have to get it done to get further?
Yeah, it's kind of that swallow the pill moment. For me, it very much is the mentality of like, even though I know I might not enjoy this, it's still going to benefit me in the long run.
Right.
And so whether that's saying like, okay, let me spend like a little bit more time focusing on academics, or a little bit more time like making sure I place out everything in the morning beforehand so tomorrow is a little bit easier. And for me, it's the idea of, you may not like it in the moment, but it's setting up kind of dominoes for a bigger result down the line.
Right.
And so that bigger result may take years to come, but like in the end, it very much is that recognition of saying, okay, I did this and I can recognize that I did this, and I did something that most people would say is like stupid. It's pointless.
Yeah.
Like one of my friends was saying, they're like, out of your 4 years of running high school and running on like the cross country team, like, do you regret running all those miles and taking all that time and losing all of that free time? And I was like, in some ways, yes, I do, because I lost hours of my life. I lost so much time that I could have used somewhere else. But on the other hand, I'm also like, I use that time to benefit myself in the long run and set good habits in the long run.
And that's also what gets people, say when a workout day, for example, is canceled, that practice day is canceled because of whatever reason, it's that work ethic that you have to still go and do the workout that you're going to do with the team by yourself.
Yeah, and it's almost like you've had that work ethic so ingrained in your mind that if you don't do it, something feels wrong. That if you miss a run for a day, or if you you eat wrong a certain day, or you don't hydrate enough, like you notice that and you say, okay, something's missing, something isn't in line. Like, what can I do to feel back to where I was?
Right, and for me, junior year, I think there was exactly 0 times that practice was canceled, and I actually went out and ran.
Yeah.
And but then again, that's why I absolutely sucked at running.
And I think that's why Coach was so reluctant to cancel, because he knew like there were so many people on that team
that never ran.
Yeah, that didn't have that mentality.
And it got to the point where my enjoyment and my passion for cross country my senior year, even the days that were practice, I would be out early in the morning. I would be out in rain, heat, anything, getting my run in, because that was the year that I actually thoroughly enjoyed the sport. I hated the running, but I loved the sport, so I did that. And something that a lot of people said was crazy for me was I was stupid my senior year, and it was when I actually got my first real injury that made me have to take time off of cross country, because what I was doing is Mondays and Wednesdays were workout days, right? Mondays and Wednesdays were also lacrosse practice days. So I would go and I would run 8 to 9 miles doing repeats or whatever on Monday, get in my car and go drive to lacrosse practice till whenever at night. Then I would come home and weightlift.
Yeah.
And that was probably the stupidest thing I could have possibly done. And it got to the point where instead of weightlifting after I woke up at like 4:35 a.m. to go to the gym, which people thought that was more insane. And it probably was.
Because now you're spending money on it and not just spending your time with it. Yeah. And so there definitely is something to be said about like managing your time and managing your physical stress.
Yeah.
Because like at the end of the day, like the human body can only take so much before it starts crumbling under pressure. And like you may be able to sustain something for so long and like you're like, oh no, it's fine. And you may be seeing results. And then you have that breaking point and you get injured and you're like, well, where do I go from here?
Yeah.
And
with my injury senior year, I was like, because junior year, I made up injuries. I just tried to do anything to not run. But it was opposite, actually, senior year, where I got injured. I would still show up to the cross-country practices, and I'd be like, can I go do something?
Yeah.
And Gambrell was like, hey, no. And that was it. He was like, no. There was one day that he let me do the warm-up, and I get back, and my ankle is absolutely killing me. I get up to try to run. He's like, dude, sit down.
Yeah.
And I'm like, fine.
And I think it very much is like sometimes you just need somebody to tell you like, what are you doing? Like, calm down. And it almost is like you need somebody to give you not necessarily a reality check, but almost say like, hey, this isn't a smart idea.
Yeah. And I had a lot of people telling me that while I was still doing it, that it was probably not smart for me to do this. But I fell in love with both cross country and lacrosse, and I wanted to do them both. I originally signed up for fall lacrosse because it was supposed to be on Tuesdays and Thursdays, our recovery one days. And I get there, I'm like, hey guys, and they're like, it's Mondays and Wednesdays. I'm like, son of a bitch.
Yeah.
But I didn't back out of it because of that. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna be miserable.
Yeah.
So another question I have is, do you think that anyone could just take it to the level that you did with cross country? Because I assume that you didn't just wake up and be as fast as you are.
No, definitely not.
You are. It definitely took it took something extra to get to that level that you got to.
I think, in a kind of roundabout way of answering that question, I think anybody could get to that point, but it really is saying, okay, you have to take the time to first introduce yourself to running, then like slowly build up, and like some people are more naturally inclined to running than others. Like I would be pretty like dumb to say there is no such thing as natural talent, because obviously there's people who like just kind of have that physique, they have that muscle build out.
I also want to point out we have a Discord server, for cross country, and my nickname on there is Bench is more than most. I love to point that out because I find that hysterical that he was like, what do I put for him? He was like, yeah, that seems about right.
I do think, like, anybody can get to the point that I was at. It, like, and I am no stranger in terms of saying that where I was at took a lot of work, and that it's not something to discredit.
Yeah, it's not something that just happened in one night.
Yeah.
It's something that took years.
Yeah, and very specifically, it took me 5 years to get to the culmination of who I was as a runner, with staying consistent through those 4 years, and the way that our season's working only being like, okay, you only have 2 weeks off in between the transition from cross country to track, and vice versa. And it really is building that discipline early on to stay consistent with it and to stay like motivated with it, in a sense that you can see progress, in a way that you can see like benefits coming from it.
Right. And so for me personally, right, my end goal is to win first place at the Mr. Olympia competition. Do you know what that is?
I'm familiar with it. I've seen a couple posts.
It's a bodybuilding competition, like biggest guys in the world.
Yeah.
Trying to compete, and when I tell people this, they're like, "Oh, that's not possible." Looking at me now, they're like, "Yeah, you're never gonna get there." And it's funny because whenever anyone tells me that, that makes me want to do it more.
Yeah.
To prove those people wrong. And I was fortunate enough to be at the gym one day, and an actual pro bodybuilder was working out there, and I was like, "Oh, he's jacked. Okay, let me go just talk to him real quick." I asked for a piece of advice, and now he's my trainer for free.
Wow.
Like because he came up to me I came up to him, and the first workout that him and I did together, he was like, "I rarely ever train people. When I do, I make them pay me all this. I'm not going to do that," because he could tell how much this passion, this goal actually meant to me, and he was like, "I'm not wasting my time training you." And he was like one of the first people that was like, "Yeah, you can actually do it."
Yeah, and I think for a lot of people, a lot of people work differently. I know a couple of people where it's like, as soon as you tell them you can't do that, they're like, "Okay, I'm going to prove you wrong." But what I've found is a lot of people, at least in terms of like physical challenges, or whether it be with like schooling or anything, as soon as you tell them like, "Hey, I will be somebody to cheer you on, and I will be here to encourage you and to support you because I believe that you can do it," like something in their brains just kind of clicks and says, "Okay, let's go for it. Let's put this much more effort into it to try to get that goal."
It's kind of like a thing where if you tell them they're not going to ever be able to get there, yes, it motivates them, but having that person say, "You can get there if you work hard enough," is like 10 different people telling you can't get there from one person. So when it comes to like, I would say it is going from starting now to becoming a champion in a sense. It takes definitely a different kind of mindset, and I was watching a video of a legendary bodybuilder, Jay Cutler, who was 4-time Mr. Olympia, had the greatest comeback in the sport ever. And he was like, in order to become a champion at what you are, you almost have to be a little bit insane to be able to do it.
Yeah. I would definitely say, like, in order to be really good at something, you have to be willing to sacrifice other things.
Right.
For cross country, that's definitely like you're sacrificing your time. You're sacrificing like having to build a very consistent schedule of maybe not saying, "Okay, let me plan my day around my run," but let me figure out a time where I can slot my run so it's not being affected by the weather, or like, where can I put this in my day that I can then kind of structure things off of.
Yeah.
And so there's definitely that level of sacrifice and definitely that level of discipline that's needed for that.
Especially with cross country, having to wake up at 3:30 in the morning to be able to get to school by 4 to get to the event by 5.
Yeah.
And you don't run till 9.
Yeah. There's definitely some aspects of every sport that people would say, why would you do that? You are crazy. Like,
no, I would just be I was the type of person where I would text my cross friends who stayed up till 2 or 3 in the morning. I'd text them when I got up and be like, "Good morning, man." They're like, "Bro, I haven't even gone to sleep." I'm like, "Well, I'm about to go race. Let's go."
Yeah. You kind of have to become that person in other people's lives in terms of saying, like, that they question you, almost saying, like, why do you do that? And you're like, okay, there's a reason to my madness, and there's a method to kind of what I'm doing. It may sound crazy, and at many times even saying it out loud to yourself, it's going to sound crazy. But as long as you kind of trust what you're putting into it, and trust that you're doing not just what's best for, like, your results, but what's kind of best for your health and what's best for your physical, like, if you're out there getting injured, but you still believe that it's the right idea, then maybe you are crazy. But, like, if you're putting in all the work and you're seeing the results and you're seeing the benefits, then who's anybody to stop you?
Right. And when it comes to being the best at what you do, no matter what it is, do you believe that people can get there whether or not they have, like you were talking about earlier, emotional support from family members, loved ones, friends? I mean, if they unfortunately say don't have that support system, that emotional support system, do you believe that they can still find that drive in themselves to become the best at what they do?
I think there's definitely a chance of it. There's nothing that says people can't go out and be a fully self-fulfilled person. But I think if you look at kind of the most successful people in any aspect, whether it be business or sports or just kind of any field, they're going to have their support system. They're going to have their people, whether it's family or friends or just people that they've met and grown a connection to over their time of becoming where they are and getting to a point of the recognition that they have. It very much is they have that inner circle, and they very much have that group of people that they can go to say, like, hey, is what I'm doing too much? Am I going crazy in what I'm doing, or is this still keeping me on the progress and on the path to results that I want to see?
Right.
And so I very much hold it in a three-pronged system. And you've probably heard this quote. During cross-country and before races, I would always say, like, trust the run, trust each other, and trust yourself.
Yeah.
And I'll break that down. It doesn't necessarily have to be a run. I think my senior quote, I changed it to trust the process. And so in putting trust in your process, you're saying, okay, this is going to be a lot of work. This is going to be a lot of stress, but I have faith and I have trust that it's going to work out for me. In putting trust in others, you say, okay, I'm giving my all to these people in terms of saying I'm going to open up to them, I'm going to be there for them, and they're going to be there for me, hopefully.
Right.
And say, I know who they are, they know who I am, and they are my support system. And then lastly, like, you have to trust yourself in terms of saying, like, I've done all this work to get to where I am. What's to say I can't go a little bit farther?
Right. All right. So that's pretty much all I had for the interview. I'm not great at podcasts. It's probably like a quarter to half the length of an actual normal podcast. But I definitely appreciate you coming out.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
It means a lot, and I hope that the people actually learn something and maybe they can take some of the things that we use and apply it in their lives. But anyway, for right now, that's going to be it. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you guys are new. This dude's absolute legend.
I appreciate it.
That definitely one of like the nicest people that you would ever meet. Person that actually made me slightly enjoy cross country a little bit more. So big thanks to him. But I do hope that you guys enjoyed the video. And yeah, I don't know when I'm uploading again. It's whenever I have time. So.